We are live. Awesome. And welcome, everybody who's watching this podcast or vidcast, because we're actually on video. So today I've got Jane Turner with me, and we're going to talk about publishing books. So I had a bit of a chat with Jane a little while ago, and we both published books through Nat Denman, 48 Hour Author. And yeah, so this is day 2 of my podcast Blitz. And I'm Christine Stowe. In case you don't know, I'm Christine Stowe, Empowered Women in Business. So my story is that I had a daughter found out there was something wrong with her. She had a muscle condition when she was 3 months of age. I published my own book, Not Just Imogen's Mother, because I've done all sorts of other things, published 2 books, contributed to 4 more, and stood in all 3 levels of government elections, as well as set up a special school, support groups. And people often come to me and say, how did you do that, Christine? How did you make that happen? So if that's you, if you've got a burning desire to do something, if you've got a burning desire to write a book, maybe you can come to Jane or I. Or if you've got a burning desire to set up a support group for women, or support group, or a project that you'd like to get off the ground, then I'd love to have a chat to you and see if it's something that we can work on together. But today, welcome, Jane. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Okay. Well, listen, my background is something that people are often a bit surprised to find, because I've spent my whole working life up to the age of 52 working for the Australian government. So I was a person with a high value on security. And boy, did I have my nails into that security blanket like crazy. And of course, when I was made redundant, well, all of that so-called security fell away. And when things like that happen, we often get to find parts of ourselves that we may not have otherwise known. So really at that stage, though, I had got the idea to write a book several years earlier, because my employee sent me off to get some coach training. And that was so that I'd be more effective in the workplace, because I managed big teams. And in many ways, though, it set me on a whole different trajectory for my life, without me realizing it, of course. Because I thought, when I get my daughter through school, had a nice little plan here. When I got my daughter through school, I'd maybe branch out and become a coach, because I saw some amazing results come out of the coaching that I did within the workplace. So I got a little bit fired up about it, Chris. And so I noticed all the really successful coaches had books. So I thought, well, I'll just start writing a book now. So that, by the time I was made redundant, I'd spent over $30,000 and 5 years trying to write that book.
Oh, wow.
Now, what had stopped me, and everyone will recognize to some degree or other, that little voice in the head, that little kind of nagging doubt that could be saying, well, who wants to read a book written by you? You're not a specialist. You're not an expert in any field. You're not even a particularly good writer. And so those little things were going around in my head, but other things were as well. And I talk a lot about the hero's journey, because that's a wonderful storytelling tool. And in terms of the hero's journey, I got a call to adventure. And if we think about an old-fashioned clock face, well, that happens at the 12 o'clock point. And so that call to adventure was when I wanted to write the book. So I started writing the book, and I was moving along that clock face until I hit the 9 o'clock point, which is a threshold of sorts. And at the threshold, we find a guide or a helper, or perhaps a coach, to help us over the threshold. And for me, that was a person called Lorna Stewart, who works at the Transpersonal Coaching College here in Sydney. And I went a little bit woo-woo, as my husband says, because I went through the transpersonal coach training. And how that helped me was that she taught us about the hero's journey. So through learning that, I got to recognize that actually those little voices in the head aren't meant to stop me. They're meant to help me grow and to learn. And they helped me to find my coach who got me over the threshold. So it was that little sense of doubt. And the words that really in my head really resonated with me were that you're not qualified enough. So I got the extra qualification. I learned about the hero's journey. And then I started hurtling along toward the 6 o'clock point, which is in hero's journey language, that's known as the crisis point. And for me, that crisis point was about two things. The first one was that it had taken me over 5 years and $30,000, as I mentioned earlier, to write the book. And then I was made redundant. So I had no more money left to spray around on what we call shiny object syndrome when we're trying to avoid something, avoiding discomfort, among other things. But as coaches, what we say to people is that if you sit in that discomfort, rather than playing out patterns about running away from it, some amazing things may bubble up inside of you. And for me, that little voice that was saying, you're not going to be a good writer, no one wants to read your book, and you're also too broken. So I didn't mention that earlier. That got louder and louder the closer I got to 6 o'clock. And people will find out about you if you go public with a book. So in classic hero's journey sort of format, that was really, really loud and really scary from my point of view. But on the other hand, I'd lost my job. I couldn't seem to get another one. So I really had to get the book finished. And so with that, sitting in the discomfort, a little other voice seemed to pop up in my head and said, but what if that's not what it's all about? What if it's not all about you being too broken or not a good writer or any of those things? What if it's about the importance of sharing your story? And with that, I got the permission to believe that maybe if I'm not perfect, maybe it is okay if I write a book, and maybe it is okay if people know that. And the big ugly truth that I was trying to run away from was that I had a 40-year history of binge eating disorder. And of course, I'm writing a book around menopause that ultimately came out onto the market called Thrive in Midlife. Now, in that book, I was trying to skit and scat around the actual truth about that. And I was saying I had a sugar addiction, I had emotional eating issues, but those words, binge eating disorder, actually defined me in my own head. But once I had that wake-up moment, I got to believe that, as I said, maybe I can help people anyway. And that was one slightly cathartic moment, but a really big cathartic moment was when I was standing on stage launching that book and looking at my 14-year-old daughter and her 14-year-old friends. And without having planned to do this, I found myself saying to those girls, what I want you to know is that there is nothing so broken, so shameful, or so unspeakable about you that you can't tell someone about it. And know that they'll still love you and remind you to love yourself. And you know what, Christine? It was the 14-year-old girl in here who needed to hear that the most.
We've got Cynthia watching on, and she's saying, "Wow, this is amazing." So thanks for tuning
Cynthia,
in, and it is amazing, and I'm sure that Cynthia will find a lot in this story as well, because she's actually putting a book together as well. So
congratulations, Cynthia! That's fantastic.
there are so many things that I relate to, in writing
Yeah.
my book, and
Yes.
I went along, and I never imagined that I'd write a book, and I went along to a workshop, and Stuart Denman said, "Oh, you've got a story here." And I was like, no, but I don't want to. The people will find out about you, the imposter syndrome and that voice in your head. And, it took me, I think at the time, I was one of the longest people to, I've got a little heart there too, thanks. Whoever gave us a heart, presume it's Cynthia. It took me a long time to actually publish it because I'd just been elected to council as well. And I didn't want all those people kind of seeing the guts of it all, if you like. But once I published my book, it's so many things, so many doors, so many things opened up. So I'm sure that people listening, and there are a lot of authors in our audience, because that's, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with. I never believed that until I started hanging around with authors and politicians, and I wrote a book and got elected. So there's so many things that I can relate to.
Yeah. So then moving on with the hero's journey too. So there was I at the 6 o'clock point and launching the book and having that cathartic moment with my daughter, and realizing also at that moment I wasn't actually put on this earth to help women through menopause, even though I'd just written a book about it.
Yeah.
But I'm put on this earth to help people to do that, to really own their story, to share their story. And with that, then I opened a business around helping people to write, publish, and promote their books. Because one of the amazing things that happened to me off the back of that first book was not only that I found my purpose, like that was result enough really to justify $30,000 and 5 years of my life and all the sweat and tears around it. But also I got an email in my inbox one day from the organisers of the Women's Economic Forum. And it said, one of our members has just read your book and recommended we get you to come and speak at one of our events. And there I was on stage in India at an event that over 2,000 women went to.
Wow.
And was that life-changing or was that life-changing? But what I love about that now was not only the experience I had, but the fact that I can refer all of my authors to those opportunities as well.
Wow.
And then the other thing, I wound up getting full-page coverage in the Australian Women's Weekly, Prevention Magazine, Wellbeing Magazine. I was on the 7:30 Report, the House of Wellness, Today Extra program, numerous articles in newspapers. And this is all because of being a published author. And that's the message I want to get out there, is that don't just write the book, take those next steps to get out from behind the book, because books won't sell themselves. So within my packages, it's that I can help authors to write, publish, and also get speaking opportunities. And not only at the Women's Economic Forum, but these days I also run author showcase events at the State Library of New South Wales. And those we run a little bit like a TEDx event, so that the authors are getting footage, which is both the wide angle and the close-up version of their presentations, so that they can leverage that to pitch themselves to media outlets, to speaker bureaus. For anyone in particular who wants to go into the speaking field, that's a really powerful piece of footage, because the State Library of New South Wales signage is emblazoned behind them. So I actually have one of these coming up on the 10th of August, if anyone's interested. So just be in touch, because they're fabulous days in and of themselves, but that footage is gold. So I'm just blessed now to have, really, I had to get pushed off the ledge. As they say, the universe will tap you on the shoulder, then it's going to hit you across the head with a brick if you don't answer the calling. So this is back to hero's journey. I had the calling. I ultimately did follow the calling. I had to lose my job for it to happen, of course, and all that sense of who I actually was. And part of the who I thought I was broken. And I'm incredibly grateful to have moved beyond that point. And we don't have to be perfect, for goodness sake. That's not what humanity is all about. And this question of books, though, books change lives. We've all read at least one book, if not more, that has changed our life. The one that's going to change it the most, I reckon, is the one we write ourselves, though, Chris. So for me, though, that one I ever read was Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. But I reckon everybody has a book like that has touched them in one way or other.
I think that the book that
you're trying to think of yours now.
Oh, no, yeah, the book that changed it for me is Live the Life of Your Dreams. And that's something that I've lived by. So Cynthia's asking, can Jane share her email with the group? Sure. Jane will be sharing links, tagging Jane, and she'll also be sharing links to her upcoming package.
Yes.
What do you call it again?
The Author Showcase. It's
the Author Showcase
with New South Wales, and
I
have another event directly before it, which is the How to Write a Non-Fiction Book. So we go from that event in the same room, of course. People don't have to stay for both, but we have the How to Write a Book part in the morning. Then the authors actually presenting their books, the ones who have already written them or almost written them. They don't have to be published yet, but they are talking about their experience of writing their book, themselves, their business. That footage, we actually tailor what they say. So I have a lot of coaching time with them to make sure that they get the words on the footage that they need to leverage to get the results they want. So we're very strategic.
Do you record that, and can people find it somewhere? Because I think, going through that, their journey and going through the
Mm.
presentations would
Yes.
be helpful for people who can't make it to Sydney. For
Oh,
example, I've got some
cool.
US
Okay.
people tuning in and, on
Mhm.
the podcast. And I think even just, this conversation here will be so
Mm.
useful to people, because when I wrote my first book, Not Just Imogen's Mother, um,
Yes.
you write the story, and then the marketing starts, then going out and getting the speaking opportunities,
Mm.
and they don't just fall in your lap. It does give you extra credibility, I have to say that. It
Mm.
does give you, when you tell people you've written a book. And I think I was at a presentation one day and they said only 2% of people become published authors. And so many people have a book in their head, but they don't actually get it out there. And then the other
Mm.
thing is that once you've published the book, the opportunities just don't fall in your lap. You need to, it gives you the credibility, but you need to do these sorts of things like you're talking about, like the author's showcase. But
Mm.
you're recording it for the authors, but it would be great to be able
Oh,
to
yeah.
access it somewhere.
Yes, yes, yes. Look, I have a lot of material that if people want to go to my YouTube channel, which is called Write with Jane, a lot of material there of great examples. And I have a complimentary strategy session available to anyone also who wants to book in and just have a chat with me about how to construct a story that is going to really make a difference, and how to structure their book. Any questions they have whatsoever, completely free. And I don't try and sell you anything. If you want to know about my programs, I'll tell you about my programs. But I'm at a stage in my life, I'm in my 60s now, happy as Larry doing what I do. And I just want to see more great books coming out into the world. That's my mission.
I've come across a few people, women, lost their job in their 50s, 52 and
Not
53.
uncommon. Yeah.
And it's a tough point in your life then,
Mm.
as a woman, well, for me as a carer, but to find something else. You've got a depth of experience, but you know so it's a real slap in the face. So to turn it around and to find, the hero's journey, something, the gold coming out of the coal, if you like,
Yes.
is
Nicely put.
amazing. But
Mm.
also that you're helping other people to do the same. And I know you've written a couple more books, but we're nearly out of time. But I really like the idea of this author's showcase, because I know there'll be quite a few speakers, prospective speakers, TEDx speakers listening in, and there should be something that's very attractive to them. I was just thinking myself, I've applied for a few TEDx talks, and often
Yes.
they need footage. And I was just thinking to myself, I do actually have footage
Mm-hmm.
on my YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel, Empowered Women in Business, just in case. But I'll be sharing the links in the chat. Um, so we're going live to Facebook page, and LinkedIn. So I'll be sharing Jane's links, and Jane will share the links. And if you want to ask her any questions, post a question in the chat on the live, and Jane can come back and answer the questions as well. But this is absolute gold. What you've been telling us about your journey, but also about writing the book isn't sort of the end point, if you like. That's part of the
Yes.
healing.
Yes. And the thing about the hero's journey too, whilst I shared my journey, take on board that sort of a format, the fact that we get a calling, that will hit roadblocks where we need help to get beyond them, and that will come to a fairly dark place where you think, oh, it's not going to work, it's, I'm too broken, or whatever it is, your particular narrative. But then you can get over that. You can move
But
forward, and then the rewards come.
but
And you go,
also that little
"Oh,
voice in your head, that little itty bitty shitty committee.
committee, yes."
It's going, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? Nobody listens to you. You don't have the money. You don't have the time. You can't write. And what are you going to do with a book anyway?
And I say, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's so much to be got out of writing a book. But it starts once you're published, and getting that footage is
Mm.
gold. So is there any last things you'd like to share with the audience?
No, just to say that, a wise person once said, and I can't remember who it was, there's the person we are now, and there's the person we can be. So we're sort of essentially living two lives, one not quite yet realized, and it is closer than you think. And it does often come down to that piece about getting help. So it's that 9 o'clock point on the hero's journey where a lot of people will just stall and completely stall and never get to this point where they get to see, okay, now this all makes sense. I have a sense of purpose. That's a great gift. You know, it's a great gift, but we all deserve that. We really do.
Yeah, and everybody's got a gift, I think. Doesn't matter kind of where you are or how broken you think you are, or everybody has a
Mm.
gift to bring to the world. And I had much the same thoughts. I'm finding something wrong with Imogen. You know, I was on that
Mm.
corporate trajectory and then finding something wrong with her. My total life, you know, spun out of control, or, you know, and my identity was tied up around getting to that point. You know, I had that perfect corporate life. And then what was I going to do? And couldn't go back to work. And I've done a lot of professional, personal development around mindset and changing identity. It's a really difficult concept. It was a difficult concept to imagine. And when I think about it, my identity was as corporate, and then I became a carer, like a nobody, and then got elected to council. I was like, you know,
Wow.
people were kind of rolling out the red carpet. So, you know, those changes in identity, we do it all the time. We
Yeah.
change from, you know, daughter to wife, carer, mother, sister. You know,
Mm.
we have different identities. So if you think about it like that, but you know, and people say to me, you know, I say I go sailing or I've written a book. They go, "You what?" You know,
Yes.
you
Yes.
what?
Yes.
And but that's been about imagining that it's possible.
Absolutely. And look, one thing I do have that is available to anybody who contacts me is that my signature book is called Mindset for Authors: How to Overcome Perfectionism, Procrastination, and Self-Doubt. No surprise that I wrote that book, I guess, given what I said. But also comes with it a creativity priming meditation, which goes for 7 minutes. It's quite a powerful little 7 minutes, because a lot of my authors tell me, do you know what? How I got this book written was not only with your support, but every time I sit down to write, I listen to that 7 minutes, go straight into my writing. One lady tells me she has 90 what's the word I want? Undisturbed minutes of pure, again, what's the word? I'm losing the words.
Writing, just
Concentration.
getting it. Yeah,
Concentration,
yeah.
90 minutes of pure concentration when she gets the clutter out of her mind, the refocus. And once people work with me, they almost sort of semi-programmed into my voice means that book is going to be finished. And
So
that's why
that's
my voice on the meditation is so powerful.
awesome. That's fantastic. So you'll share your links after we
Mhm.
end the stream, and it's been fantastic. And there's been so many golden moments, so many pearls of wisdom dropped. So thanks very much for being on today. It's
Thank you,
great and
Prince.
fantastic. All right, we'll see you for now.
Bye-bye.